Conversations on Dance is proud to have Yumiko as a continued partner in 2021. Yumiko is a company inspired by beauty and standards. As a leader in the dancewear industry, they take great pride in their impact as a socially and environmentally conscious brand. This month, Yumiko introduced 6 new mesh tones available for all personalized pieces. And as a summer celebration, Yumiko is offering a special in-store discount to our New York City listeners. Show that you are subscribed to Conversations on Dance at checkout to receive a 10% discount on your in-store purchase. Visit yumiko.com for store hours, and be sure to follow along on Instagram @Yumiko to stay up to date. Special thanks to the Town of Vail for their support of the Vail Dance Festival and Conversations on Dance live podcast recordings. This episode was recorded at the Manor Vail Lodge.
Hello, everyone. Before we get started today, I just wanted to give a quick note about this episode. We did have some technical difficulties with the sound on one of the microphones, so it did take a little bit longer to edit and fix up. But we did hear from quite a few of you wondering where this episode was and when we were going to post it, and it really was a great episode, and so we still wanted to make sure that we shared it, even though the sound was not perfect. So we do apologize in advance, but we really hope that you will enjoy this super fun conversation. This is our final live recorded episode from Vail. We did 9 whole episodes from there, so if you missed any of them, be sure to go back and check out the feed. We have 9 more episodes with festival artists that will be coming your way. So we have a lot of other exciting content as well, not just from Vail, from other places and other things that are coming up. So be sure to stay tuned and subscribe to Conversations on Dance wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to rate and review us as well if you like what you've been hearing. Just lastly, we want to thank all of you for your support. It was so wonderful to see so many people in Vail, to connect with all of you. We've been getting lots of messages from people saying that they've really enjoyed the content coming out. And so it just means so much to us. And we love when you all reach out to us. It really makes us feel good. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Rebecca King-Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Sean Breeden. Rebecca and I were both former dancers with the Miami City Ballet, and we now host the podcast Conversations on Dance. And we've been hosting these chats every morning here at Festival Forums since the festival began, and we have 2 more talks coming up through the end of the festival.
Yeah, so after these events, we record them, as you know, and we put them out on our podcast, which you can access wherever you get your podcasts, or you can visit our website. We also have some cards in the front if you want to grab those for more information. If you missed any of these, you can listen to all of them after the fact, or listen again if you like.
Yeah, so today we are joined by choreographer Justin Peck and triple threat Robbie Fairchild. So I think, Justin, you've been on several times, and maybe some of these guys have heard our podcast with you, but Robbie, this is your first time. I think it would be great if both of you could just start with a little bit about how you first became involved in dance.
Well, my sister, Megan Fairchild, is a principal of New York City Ballet. She's 3 years older than I am, and she would come home when she was 6 years old and I was 3, and she would be doing her routines in the living room, and I was hooked. I would try and follow everything that she did, even wear her old tutus. And it was incriminating footage for sure. And then it wasn't until, so my sister got me into dance, and then I always say Gene Kelly's the one who made me want to be a dancer. And it was when Valentine's Day, like 1993, Gene Kelly had just passed away, and my mom was like, "You've never seen Singing in the Rain, you've never seen Gene Kelly performed." So she bought me the VHS as my Valentine's Day present. And it was, I mean, the rest is history. And was really into jazz dancing. I wanted to be a song and dance man, and then I wanted to go to LA and do music videos, and Janet Jackson and Britney Spears wanted to be in those music videos. And my sister saw a competition video of mine, and she said, "Ooh, you could really use some work on your technique," in a very nice sisterly way. And she said, "You should, I know you want to be a jazz dancer, but if you want to be a good jazz dancer, ballet is the basis for all technique. So why don't you audition for the School of American Ballet, see if you get in, it'd be a great way to become a better jazz dancer." This is so funny that I'm telling this story with you in the room, because the first day of the School of American Ballet summer course, there's the ice cream social. And you were not eating ice cream. You were in the ballet studio with your foot up to your ear. And I can't do that kind of stuff. This is Jazzarina who showed up at a ballet summer course. And I remember seeing you do that and that foot of yours. And people started asking me questions and my voice was cracking. I just felt so uncomfortable. I was like, what am I doing here? I'm not a ballet dancer. But then I think that's the summer we met each other, right?
I think so, yeah.
I don't know if we were roommates then or suite mates, but I mean, once you go to the School of American Ballet and you get to learn from Peter Bull during the day and see him do Oberon at night in Midsummer Night's Dream, it's kind of the end-all be-all. And I was like, okay, I want to be a ballet dancer.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know if anyone heard Damien speak about what inspired him as a dancer, and he talked a lot about Jacques Demois and Eddie Villela and Misha Baryshnikov, and those are definitely very important references for any male dancer. But I think I love that Robbie brought up Gene Kelly, especially because that, for me too, was like such a point of inspiration from such a young age, especially for me, growing up in Southern California and just like having to rely on, film footage, that kind of thing. And for any young male dancer anywhere throughout the country or the world, I think like that's such a access point to what dance is. And, films like Singing in the Rain or even West Side Story for me, like as a kid watching that and being like, oh, like there's storytelling through dance here. There's a kind of like grittiness to the movement. There's clearly a sense of like technique with how these artists are moving through space. And so that was definitely a big reference for me. And also I think for me as a kid, my family would bring me to New York every summer. That was like our big family trip. We would go for a week every summer for as long as I can remember. And my parents would just take us to go see a bunch of theater. That's really was how I became exposed to theater and in particular dance. That's really what I was fascinated by. And there's certain shows that I really remember seeing that made a strong impression on me. And the one that I've spoken about a lot, but I'll say it again, is Bring Into Noise, Bring Into Funk with Savion Glover. And it was the first time I really saw that kind of rhythm tap dance on stage. And I didn't know what it was. I was 9 years old when I saw this. I just knew that I was so enamored by the kind of balance between movement, performance, and musicianship that exists in the tap dance form. And so that was my way into dance. So I got home, I got back to California, and I told my parents, like, I want to learn more about what this form is. And so I just started to take tap dance lessons, classes, and that eventually led to jazz, and then ballet was the last thing for me as well. It was kind of like I sort of fought it for as long as I could. And when I was 13, going on 14, I saw a performance by American Ballet Theater. They toured through San Diego like by some miracle, because they've never been back there since. They came once.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was this one.
They came for you.
Yeah, it was. And it was my first exposure to some of these male dancers in particular, because I hadn't seen ballet dancers on that level, and that was like one of those life-altering moments for me, where I was like, I really want to throw myself into this other form, which is ballet. And actually, it's important for me to note that when I saw ABT perform, Herman Cornejo was in the corps de ballet, or he was a soloist, and he was dancing Pezanpas. So he was like probably in his early 20s and had just started dancing with the company. And so it's like a big full circle moment to get to work with him now here in Vail.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So it sounds like you both kind of were more interested in theater at first, but then we caught the ballet bug. So was there a moment when you're at the School of American Ballet where you considered going into the theater arena at all, or was it just sort of blinders on, now we're going to try to join a company?
Well, I think, is this on? Well, am I on? Is this thing on?
No.
Yeah. But I'll just keep going?
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
great.
so.
You can edit that part out. It was, I think, the part of the ballet world that just got me is the perfectionist side of me. You're able to really monitor your progress. You either hit fifth position or there it is. You either hit fifth position or you don't. Mm-hmm. And in jazz, there's a lot of zhizhing. You fall out of something and plan B is better than plan A. It's jazz. It's improv. And so I wanted to see how far I could go. Mm-hmm. And I always went to theater. I always I went and saw Hair 7 times when I was in the ballet company because I think it was such a departure from the ballet world, seeing artists up there just so free, seeing their faces off about freedom. And in a ballet world, you have these confines of the classical art form, and you find your freedom within those confines. And so I was in the ballet world, appreciating the theater world, going, okay, I want to do that someday. But not now. Like, the golden time for a ballet dancer is really like 30 to 33, because it's when your artistry matches your physical ability. And then after 33 or something like that, you start to feel certain things, and your artistry continues to grow because you have life experiences that teach you about yourself and how to relate to another person on stage and your comfortability in front of an audience. So I always thought, okay, when I'm like 35, I'll try and transition. When I don't look good in white tights anymore, put me in a jazz shoe and a slack. And so it wasn't until, there was a New York City Ballet Gala, and we were kind of honoring Fred Astaire. And I was tap dancing in a Valentino tuxedo with a cane and living my Broadway life on the City Ballet stage. Christopher Wheeldon comes up to me at the gala dinner and says, "Hey, can you sing?" And I said, "Depends on who's listening." That's when he said, "I want to take you out to dinner. I have a project I'm working on," and then yada yada, American Paris. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think coming to the School of American Ballet in my mind was like my ticket to get to New York City. And I was still so new to the form. Like I discovered, or I became inspired by ballet right before I turned 14, and then I came to the School of American Ballet right before I turned 16. So it was a pretty fast process, and for me, I was just trying to learn as much as I could about ballet. I didn't know very much about Balanchine or the School of American Ballet even, or New York City Ballet, and I just knew that they had this great training program in New York with a dormitory. And I was like, okay, I could go live in New York maybe. Yeah. And when I got to New York and I started to become exposed to the works of George Balanchine and Jerome Robbins, and then a lot of other dance makers making work at Lincoln Center, and the dancers of the company and the energy of the other students at the school, I just became really intrigued by this ballet world, and sort of just dove into it and wasn't sure where it was going. I felt like I had to play a lot of catch up because I started so late. Like I came to the school and I was in like the intermediate level, which is like the lowest level you could get into as a dorm student. And so I just spent like 3 or 4 years working as hard as I could to catch up. And by some small miracle, I was invited to join New York City Ballet, and that journey just kind of like carried forward. But my interest in theater and in film was always there. I think like it was all part of this like massive swirl of curiosity.
Right.
So just put a pin on it.
Yeah, I feel like maybe, so both of you kind of maybe were attracted to SAB and New York City Ballet for the element of New York and being close to Broadway. Once you started dancing there, though, maybe was when you were first introduced, like you say, to Balanchine and the Balanchine technique. And as jazz dancers, is that something that you drew towards immediately? Was it a little different than your initial styles that you had learned? I know, Justin, you said you started a little later, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why I was so attracted to New York City Ballet in particular as a ballet company, it's jazz dancing. It's there is Americana, there is this New York City energy in the way that Balanchine taught his dancers to dance. How high, how fast, how, you know, one of my favorite ballets to dance is Duo Concerton. And I thought to myself, why? And it's because it's literally tap dancing with ballet slippers. It's just fast footwork flying across the stage. And, you know, I've done The Prince and Sleeping Beauty, I've done The Prince and Swan Lake, and I finished those performances and thought, oh my God, I did it. It wasn't like, okay, and then next time we're going to do this. I was like, okay, one and done. That was so fun. And it's like the reason why I joined, the reason why I started ballet was to see how far I could go. And I loved the challenge. But put me in a ballet slipper and fast footwork flying across the stage like Gene Kelly in a ballet company, like that. And that there's a place for that in New York City Ballet. Like that's what, for me, what drew me to the Balanchine style and what made me want to be a ballet dancer is that jazziness.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, Balanchine always said his favorite dancer was Fred Astaire, so that connection feels pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely... It was an adjustment for me because the ballet training that existed in San Diego was much more Russian-based, Vaganova, kind of slow, less emphasis on musicality and more emphasis on like technique. And so I was like really blown away by the Balanchine technique and style and the challenges of that, and also how that eventually like informed my own work as a choreographer, because I really feel like Balanchine and everyone who developed the style and the technique at the school laid the groundwork for how all these dancers move, and I have the privilege of just kind of like standing on the shoulders of all that and harnessing this style and this technique and seeing how far we can push it, further into the future. So, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. So Robbie, you've been featured in some of Justin's most celebrated ballets. Obviously, you guys have a great friendship, but you have a great artistic relationship. So what do you think it is about being in the studio together that makes such a fruitful partnership?
Well, I think you can tell we both have the same kind of introduction to dance. It's the same. We've played, I think every time we're still in ballet class, we feel like we're playing catch up to the rest of the group who's been dancing like fifth position since they were 4 years old. There is, when we were in the School of American Ballet, we were roommates. And this is before, there was a San Francisco Ballet summer course audition, on a Saturday. We were up till about 2 a.m. playing Dance Revolution, which is there was the at-home version, which is these pads, and you played through the PlayStation on your TV, and it was tap dancing, with rhythm, and we were addicted to it. And we woke up the next morning and we couldn't do the audition because we were, the dorm room is just concrete. So we had shin splints and couldn't do the San Francisco Summer Course audition. Right?
Yeah.
It was crazy. But that, I don't know, I feel like we have a very similar, we're the same generation, we're the same influences, the same love for possibilities, and I think that's, I'll never forget, right when you started choreographing for the company and we were in the studio working on increases, it had started to feel a little bit like, and I know this is a crazy thing to say because you can't really say that you're in a drought when you're in a company with rep from Balanchine and Robbins, but I think anybody who was around during the time when they were creating, the most amazing thing about New York City Ballet is the creative energy force, the choreographic, just the lifeblood is just in the new work. Mm-hmm. And I had started to feel a little getting the itch to do something. Mm-hmm. And then this one came along and it just, kind of blew everything out the window. I got to bring so much of what our DNA is as dancers into, it just felt very, very current, very right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something really special about the fact that we kind of grew up together. I think that's something that you can't recreate. You can't fake that or recreate it. It's something that just exists. It's just a circumstance, and there's something extraordinary about that, and that familiarity and that understanding of one another that can then be incorporated into a process, a creative process. Mm-hmm. And then also to me, Robbie is a real storyteller through his dance interpretations. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to come by, and it's something that's really natural for him. And I don't know if anyone saw the performance last night, but I feel okay, good. Because when I feel Robbie comes out on stage, you just believe him. He can walk across the stage, and it's he brings a real sense of belief in dance and dance communication, and you can't, that doesn't exist in 99% of the dancers. And I certainly feel that when I watch him perform, and I feel lucky to be able to be in partnership with him whenever we're working together. Yeah. And I miss him at New York City Ballet. I was telling him this morning, I was it was so nice to see him out there, in this kind of repertoire again, because it's been a while. There's a lot of special currents running through.
Yeah. Justin, I wonder if any of those Dance Revolution moves ever made it into any of your ballets.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is I'm glad Robbie told that story, because we didn't think much of it at the time. We were just having a good time. And then, we couldn't do that San Francisco Ballet summer course audition. No big deal. But then cut to, I don't know, it was 15 years later. And I was creating a ballet called The Times Are Racing, which is this to me, it was a very daring piece of music to tackle. It's a relatively abrasive score by Dan Deacon, and I was a little nervous about how it was going to come across to our New York City Ballet audiences. And there's a lot of percussion in it, and there's one section where I really thought back to that moment when Robbie and I were playing Dance Revolution, and I was like, I want to create a duet that's inspired by that moment and that the kind of like synchronicity of two bodies moving together through space and doing the kind of like exact same choreography. And this was a rare moment where I actually put myself into the ballet because I just wanted to dance in a sneaker. And yeah, we made this duet. And you can actually watch it on YouTube. We created a short film of this section where Robbie and I kind of carved through one of the New York City subway stations, and it's actually very much inspired by the film work that involves Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, and the sequence is a single camera take. So it's almost 3 minutes long and it's one continuous take. So we really had to nail it. And there was no kind of like masking what we were doing on film. And it took us, I think Robbie had just taken a red eye back to New York from a gig. So he showed up not so fresh in the morning, but with a good attitude. And we did that sequence like 12 or 13 times before we got it. And it was about 40 degrees in the subway station. And we were dancing on concrete. There we were. So
I tell you, when we were like 3/4 of the way through and somebody would walk through the frame or something would happen that, oh my Lord.
yeah.
It's just like,
I swear I didn't know the answer to that question. I'm so glad I asked that. I thought it was just going to be a joke, but
So we could sit here all day and talk about your careers at New York City Ballet. I mean, you became a principal dancer, you became resident choreographer, but we don't have all day, unfortunately. So I want to hear a little bit about how you guys finally got to live a little bit of that Broadway dream. Obviously, Robbie, you told us a little tidbit about how Christopher Wheeldon approached you, and Justin, I'm curious later to hear about how you made that jump to choreographing for theater. So let's start with Robbie.
So Chris asks me if I would audition, and he said, "You're the first one. We're just doing it in the music director's apartment. So be the book writer, Craig Lucas, the music director, Rob Fisher, and myself, Christopher Wheeldon." And I was so nervous. I went and took some singing lessons, prepared some Gershwin tunes, and I said before I started singing, I was like, "Can I just face the wall?" So I'm sitting towards the wall in my audition in this brownstone apartment. And it was the beginning of a long process. I think they realized that because Chris wanted it to be dance heavy, it's his directorial debut. You lead with your best foot forward, and he wanted to really bring ballet to Broadway. And so it was the beginning of like a 1.5-year journey where the music director really believed in me. He set me up with his the person that he thought would be a great vocal coach for me. So every Monday on our day off, I would be taking acting lessons and singing lessons. And then right before the last audition, John Stafford, who was dancing the Prince in Sleeping Beauty, gets injured. And I haven't been learning it. I don't know it at all. And you're going to throw this jazz dancer into white tights with like 2.5 weeks to spare. So I get thrown into the Prince and Sleeping Beauty, gearing up for the big audition for American in Paris. It was all culminating at the same time. And I go and do my audition. I think I did pretty well. Probably was terrible, but it was intermission for my dress rehearsal for Sleeping Beauty, and I go up and I'm changing into my white tunic, and I see a missed call from Christopher Wheeldon. And it says, "Rob," he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I think I've got the wrong number. I'm looking for a Jerry Mulligan." And I say that I have to this day, and he goes, "Rob, the part's yours if you want it. We'll have to have a really serious talk," because that meant asking for a leave of absence from the company at this point. It's when you go to your director and say, "I got another job." they were like, okay, your sights are elsewhere. So I clocked that. But at this point, I was 26, and I felt like I still had so much to do with the ballet company. And so once American Paris happened, and the contracts were all written up, I went to Peter's office and I said, I love working here. I just can't turn this opportunity down to dance the role that Gene Kelly made. No one else has played Jerry Mulligan up to this point, and that would be like so close to my idol. And he goes, I get it. And I said, what can I do to ensure some sort of place for me when I return? And he goes, if you make an effort to have a presence in every ballet, in every season of the ballet, then I think that we can, negotiate something here. So here I am, going down to 6 shows a week on Broadway because I'm so exhausted and my knees are just like balloons. And I'm going in on a Saturday matinee and a Wednesday evening to perform at City Ballet. And the funny thing is that I'm coming back to dance Who Cares? And what I realized when I was on stage is that I've been singing Liza for like 8 shows a week, and then here I am dancing it on my night off, which was just so surreal. But yeah, it was 3 months into Broadway, standing in an ice bucket up to my knees. My mom calls me and said, so we've been cleaning out the basement, and we just found a letter that you wrote when you were in 4th grade. You're not going to believe it. I'm like, what is it? And she goes, it's called My Special Place. My Special Place is on Broadway because there's this guy named Gene Kelly, and he's a dancer just like me. And I want to be on Broadway someday. And I also want to be in a movie. And this was the dream I had for myself when I was 10 years old, and I didn't really know what Broadway was. I just knew that Gene Kelly did it, and I want to do it. And so to be sitting there in an ice bath, knowing that no one else had played Jerry Mulligan up until this point, you're just thinking, oh my God, like this is the coolest moment to date. And that kind of wraps up that whole experience for me. It was a magical time.
How about you, Justin, with Carousel?
Yeah, I choreographed the 2018 revival of Carousel, and I was really lucky because I got to work with Jack O'Brien, who's one of the most incredible veteran theater directors. And it's an interesting sort of like ships in the night story because he ran the Old Globe Theater in San Diego for over 20 years, I think. So the whole time growing up for me in San Diego, I would see, sometimes I would be around Balboa Park, which is where the Old Globe Theater is, and I would see posters, and I remember seeing his name, like directed by Jack O'Brien. So that was always like ingrained in my mind, and so since that moment, he had come back to, he had been back in New York for some time, and he's the director credited for developing and directing Hairspray, for example. That's like another big show of his. And so what was amazing about that experience was I got to really learn from him. He really took me under his wing. Like, we spent so much time together. He did things like insisting that we commute together every morning to rehearsals and to previews and to tech. And so I would meet him at his apartment. We both lived on the Upper West Side, and we would spend 40 minutes every morning driving down, and then and 40 minutes at the end of the day, like coming home. We would start and end our days together, and we would just kind of like be together all day. And so and I learned just so much from him about how to kind of run a room and how to set the tone and the energy and how to communicate with artists and cast members. And that was really helpful, I think, for me as a choreographer, then to return to New York City Ballet and continue my work there, and how I communicated with the artists at City Ballet. But yeah, it was a relatively fast process as far as Broadway goes. Like we didn't do an out of town run or anything. We opened at the Imperial Theater after working on it for probably less than a year. And there's some advantage in the fact that it's a revival, right? So it's like we all kind of know what the show is, and of course we want to add our own personal touch to what it's going to become. But the backbone of it is there, and so, I think like luckily there was space given for it to be a very dance-centric production of Carousel. And so I was able to really develop movement for the show and cut my teeth, in the Broadway world through the experience of such a historic and iconic classic musical. So I loved the experience. It was amazing. It was a lot of work, but it was so rewarding too.
And you won a freaking Tony.
I was just going to say. Literally rewarding.
Yes.
That was a fun night too.
So I'm wondering about some of the differences with that experience. Obviously, in New York City Ballet, you can pick any dancer you want. It's your ballet. I imagine you get your pick of who you want. But obviously, with a show like this, you have other considerations. You might have the best dancer, but if they can't sing a note, you can take some people off mic, but it gets a little dicey.
Right. I'm glad you bring that up because there's a constant negotiation happening with casting a show, and it's very difficult to find triple threats on Broadway. So Robbie's like a rare exception, but there's always like this kind of like tension that exists between the music director and the choreographer. I found like not just on Carousel, but on like most projects where it's like, you have to either prioritize the dancing side of things or the singing side of things. And occasionally there's someone who really has both. So that can be challenging. And I'm sure there were those kinds of negotiations going on with, the whole cast of An American in Paris as well, too.
Oh, for sure. My acting teacher, I love her so much because she doesn't, she's just such a truth teller. She, after like the performances started in American in Paris, she just comes up to me, and it was a sentimental moment. She goes, "Robbie, when you first started with me, you reading a scene was like you reading out of a dictionary. That was like exciting as it got. And they knew that they wanted it to be a dance-heavy show, and so they knew that they were going to find somebody who had maybe like two of the requirements. Could sing and dance, and then you'll have to teach them how to act, or could dance and act and teach them how to sing. For me, it was dancing and singing and teach me how to act. But also, you really need to teach me how to sing because I don't really know what I'm doing. But it was very that, and I that's what made me work so hard, is that I knew how much work I had to do, and also I think loving the theater like we do, stepping into like the lead role of a Broadway show, and you're surrounded by people who have been in acting classes and singing classes there just as long as you've been holding your ballet bar, to out of respect for the work that they've done, don't just assume you can go up in there and get mic and do it. Like, put in the work. There's so much work that you have to do to honor what they do. And I think that was the great thing about An American in Paris, is that the actors and singers had to learn how to dance, and the dancers had to learn how to sing and act. So everyone was out of their comfort zone, and there was appreciation for everyone in the room. Everyone was freaking out a little bit.
Yeah. So, Robbie, let's circle back to that note that you wrote as a young boy. Also, film and movies was involved in that note. So, of course, both of you now have experience in that field. So, Robbie, tell us a little bit about Cats, and Justin, West Side.
Meow. I mean, what a journey that was. I got an agent after An American in Paris, and here I get this request to do a self-tape for Cats. And I was like, what? You're making a Cats film? I was like, I need a job. And so I put myself on tape for actually Rum Tum Tugger, which is not me at all. And they were like, okay, this is promising. Read for Monkastrap, which is like the leader of the tribe, the kind of narrator of sorts. And I was like, okay, this is much more my style. And so I sent in the video, and then a week later, they were like, we're going to pay for you to come to London to work with Tom Hooper in the room. And Wayne McGregor was slated to be the choreographer at the time. So at that time, I was filming, I was making a dance film, and I had 24 hours, which I could go to London before I had to go and perform with the San Diego Symphony. Oh, God. So I am on a red eye, and as soon as I get on the plane, I get a message saying they want you to read for Mr. Mistopheles as well. I didn't know the song, and so here I am trying to get sleep on this red eye and learn this song. So I show up to the studios at like 9 a.m. and they have like showers for me so I can get a little like freshen up. And then my call time's at 11 a.m. And I go into the room, and Wayne is there. Wayne had done the ballet at York City Ballet that I was in, and I really enjoyed working with him. And he had been in the room for all the auditions, and he goes, okay, sing me your song before he gets in here. What are you going to do? So I sing it, and he goes, great. That's at like a 7 energy level. Bring it down to a 2. He doesn't want you to do anything.
Interesting.
And so I'm like, really? Okay. So he gets in the room, and they turn on the little camera to record your audition, and I'm just literally doing nothing. And I just saw Tom Hooper's face kind of light up. And, you know, say what you will about the end product of the film, but getting to work with Dame Judi Dench, Sir Ian McKellen, Rebel Wilson, I mean, the list goes on and on. There was literally everyone under the sun, Taylor Swift, Jennifer Hudson. Being in the room with everyone, watching them in their craft was pretty spectacular. Mm-hmm. And it was like a lesson. You were in an acting class. You were watching masters perform these wild T.S. Eliot poems to song. Mm-hmm. And it was an incredible experience, one that I'm so grateful to have had. And like I say, if you're going to be in a bad film, be in the worst one. That like becomes the cult classic and maybe you'll get the royalties. But it was an incredible experience, and you know, sometimes you learn a lot, and sometimes it's just always a different experience. So I'll never forget in between takes Judi Dench teaching me her favorite Shakespeare sonnets, or playing bananagrams with her, and her vision is really poor, and so bananagrams had made large tiles for her to be able to see, and it was just so special to get those moments with those people. So.
Yeah.
You know what I think is special about your appearance in Cats in relation to what we were talking about is that your acting is really the crux of what you're doing, and you opened the film and you drew us in. And I think that you should be really proud of how far your acting has come from reading the dictionary.
One thing I'll add is that Andrew Lloyd Webber was kind of what Gene Kelly was to introducing us to dance. He was my introduction into theater. I remember going to soccer practice when I was 8 years old, blasting the Phantom of the Opera in the car. And what a contrast, right? But I remember singing the first song when he was in the room, and I just had every hair on my body was standing on end because I realized this is the man that made me fall in love with theater. Say what you will about Cats. Like, it was the intro to what we love.
Right.
Yeah. How about you, Justin? Tell us a little bit about West Side Story.
Sure.
We're so excited.
Yeah. I'm excited to share it with everyone.
It's been delayed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So.
It comes out in December of this year. There's so much to say about it, honestly. Like, I feel like we could do a whole nother episode.
For sure.
I will say, like, just talking about these kind of like casting processes, West Side Story was one of the most extensive casting processes I've ever been a part of. Like, we saw thousands and thousands and thousands of people for this film, and we traveled far and wide. We went to Puerto Rico, we went to Miami, we went to Los Angeles and New York, obviously, and multiple trips to all these places. And one thing that I picked up on through that process was that everyone had to be a quadruple threat. And what I mean by that is they had to sing, they had to act, they had to dance, but they also had to look right through the camera. Like there's something about how someone projects through the camera that is so specific. And sometimes we would find someone who would be like an amazing singer, actor, dancer. And then Steven Spielberg would always audition with a handheld camera. And he would film every actor, every performer, every person in the room there. And sometimes there would be I can't explain it. There's something that just like changes, like from being in person to being captured on film. That is just like, every once in a while we would see someone and he would be like, they just don't work on camera.
Did you ever have a flip where someone, you'd be like, I'm not that excited, and then through the lens of the camera, it
definitely.
Yeah.
There's actors who I'm like, I don't understand it. And then I'll see them, on the monitor and I'm like, oh, they look like a completely like different person through the lens. So that's like one of those ethereal qualities that I can't quite put my finger on, but it made the casting process even more extensive and specific. And, luckily, we honed in and we found this incredible cast of this new generation, basically, of actors, dancers, performers, singers to take on this iconic piece of American theater, dance, storytelling. And what I'm the most proud of is that everyone is an authentic dancer at the root of it. Some people came in rusty, some people had a lot of work to put in to get there, but at the end of the day, there's no body doubles. There's a kind of like high standard for what the dance had to be for this film, obviously, because it's the concept of Jerome Robbins. And so it's like one of those pivotal moments in dance storytelling throughout our history. And so that was such a priority. And I think like everyone really represented on that front. And that's rare, I think, to find that especially in a Hollywood film. So
I want to draw a few parallels between that and what you're doing here at the Vail Dance Festival. You're creating a new work that is inspired by Balanchine's Tchaikovsky Padada. And then with West Side Story, of course, you have this iconic choreography as well. So in both of these instances, how do you put your own mark on something that is so iconic?
That's a good question. I think like it always comes from a place of reverence and respect and admiration for what came before. And I think just like having studied both of those works so closely over the years and seeing many, many interpretations and actually like being able to like step inside of those works as well. I performed in the West Side Story suite at New York City Ballet. I remember learning the Tchaikovsky Padada variation like at the School of American Ballet, like in variations class. And so I think it's like, I always feel that dance, and especially ballet, is an evolutionary art form. And so it's about taking these like incremental steps forward. And I always like playing with the form. With this Padada that I created for Vail, it really takes root in the classical Grand Padada form, which is opening with a duet for the two dancers, going into a variation for the male dancer, a variation for the female dancer, and then wrapping things up with a coda. And that's sort of like an out of fashion structure that no choreographers just don't. For some reason, they're not interested in that. it's something that I've always wanted to do. And luckily here in Vail, the composer in residence is Caroline Shaw. And she thinks in a similar way to how I think, in that she loves some of these historic works, and she has an ability to kind of like sort of riff on them and create her own versions that are in conversation with the original. And so that was really like our process was, for some reason through our conversations, we honed in on Tchaikovsky pas de deux. I think because it feels like the sort of link between the way back when historic classical pas de deux of like, you know, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, Grand Pas Classique. And then you have this, this version, which is something that Balanchine made, where he plays with that form. And so we just felt like the next, that was like a great stepping stone to then jump off of and try our own version. And it really involved, like, we talked about the process a lot, and we kind of like, we held up that version and we just kind of like shattered it and let the pieces fall to the floor. And we were able to like look at what was before us and kind of pick up interesting fragments and things we wanted to like hint at or allude to, and started to like reconstruct this new version. And it was really done from a place of admiration and respect for that. So, and it's also like made for like the ballet nerd out there who knows the original so well. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen Tchaikovsky pas de deux because they perform it here quite a bit. And so I wanted it to be a piece that that the audience could almost like be in on, and that it could be this like collective experience of, you know, something that I was participating in, Tyler Peck's participating in, Herman Cornejo's participating in, but also I should mention, you know, Brooklyn Ryder, the string quartet, and Caroline are participating in, but also the audience at large, so that there's this like collective geeking out over this like ballet form and what we're doing with it.
That's so perfect for Vail, a collective geek out. I like it.
Yeah. Well, we could sit here and talk to you guys all day. There's so much to mine, but I feel like if we don't turn it over to the audience, they're going to kill us. So I'm sure you guys have lots of questions. Let's start over here.
There's $1 writing on this answer.
Okay.
So, being a Subway fan as well as a ballet fan, we watched the movie The Beast again last night, and my question is about the sound, because you're tapping in sneakers on concrete. We can barely hear the tapping here, and yet. So it's like, did the sound get added, but it's so good to the footwork that doesn't seem possible?
Yeah, that's a good question. Can I answer it?
Yeah,
I don't know
go
if
ahead. You're good.
I mean, we actually, so the process of making that film was we performed the work, and once we get a good take of the visuals, we then go through the whole sequence again with just the sound designer. So they capture the sounds without any other, I mean, there's a little bit of ambient noise around because it's a subway, but they just like, we would just focus on the footwork and the sounds, and there would just be like a boom mic held up to our feet, and that's how we captured the sound. And then in post-production, you put them together, and that's actually the process with most dance on film. Like, even if it doesn't involve tap dance, just to get the sound, the sounds of the feet, you know, scuffing around. It's always the last material that has to be captured, and it's always kind of like, oh man, we got it already though. We did it on camera, now we have to do it again for the sound.
I have a crazy story that probably needs a little fact checking. I heard from a very close friend of Stanley Donen, who worked with Gene Kelly on a lot of his films, who was a tap dancer. Gene Kelly was so busy, he would do the film, you would see the video of him, and Gene had to run off and do something else. And so Stanley is the one who's doing the most of the taps that you hear in some of the films.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Very
Wow,
interesting.
great question.
right
Yes.
here.
Yeah, first I just want to congratulate you both personally on becoming an uncle 2 times over.
Yes.
And becoming a father.
Yes.
And then just another question about West Side Story, which is how much say did you have in how the camera was going to film the dance?
That's a good question. I was a little nervous before signing on to the project in the first place, for many reasons. But one was that I had never worked with this team, but once I kind of said, all right, let's go for it, they were so inclusive and collaborative, and there was such a partnership that was established from day one. It began with Steven walking every morning to my office at Lincoln Center. He would get his Starbucks tea. He doesn't drink coffee. Get his Starbucks tea, and he would walk to my office, and we would sit together for a few hours every morning and just listen to the music, and we would just kind of brainstorm together and make these kind of crude storyboard drawings for how we envision, the dance at the gym to be, or cool, or any other numbers that run through that film, and that partnership really carried forward in a similar way to how Jack O'Brien took me under his wing. We would often commute together to location scout. We would have dinners together. We would sit side by side every day on set for the 79-day shoot that we did, just like this. And we're there 12, 13, 14, 15 hours at our days, and a lot of downtime, a lot of time to just like talk about anything. And also it was a chance for us to talk about, the creative that we were aiming to achieve with the film. And also for me to just kind of like learn from him. And he's such a master at his craft. I mean, he's really, really good at making films, as you guys know, from his track record. And when I saw the film for the first time, I had that same thought. I was just like so proud of it and so grateful for being included in the creative output, and also just in awe of of his skill and talent at filmmaking. So,
So cool.
Yeah, right here.
Could you talk a bit about empowering boys in dance?
Pardon?
Could you talk a bit about the empowering boys in dance? I have some male students, and I'd like to hear what you guys are doing with that and what the goals are. And
Thank you. Yeah, we were running out of time. Thank you.
Yes.
We did want to talk kind of about that, and if you guys, when you were starting to dance, if you kind of did find this adversity, and from other people maybe, and why do you feel like community programs like Empowering Boys in Dance are important to kind of go into the community, introduce boys to dance like you were through film and through other, like going to Broadway?
I grew up in Salt Lake City, and if you weren't Mormon or if you weren't on the football team, you were an outcast, and I just want to be part of the team. I just want to be included. And so I would only ever tell people that I tap danced. Heaven forbid I told people that I did ballet. And I'll never forget, my studio that I went to was close to my middle school, and all the guys from the football team came to the dance studio one day because they wanted to see the most popular girl in school dancing. And all they cared about was pointing and laughing at me through the window in my ballet class. And it was scarring. It was so awful. And I'll never forget how isolating it felt. But when you have the dance bug, there's nothing else you can do. You just have to do it. And that's what was so magical about SAB is, yes, I started to fall in love with ballet, but I also was like, these are my people. We all have the same battle wounds, and we were able to be there for each other. And there was something so special about realizing, like, this is my community. And I think for those who are the only boys in their dance schools, which is the majority of places, that's why I felt like it was really important to step out and do more theater and more TV and film, because that's how I accessed the arts. That's how I accessed dance. That's how I fell in love with it. Somebody came to an American in Paris afterwards, and it was my favorite thing anybody's ever said. They said, "This is my 8th time coming to see your show. I love it so much, I just bought my first tickets to go see New York City Ballet."
Wonderful.
And that was like my mission. I came back to do one last show at New York City Ballet and have my farewell. And I just remember saying to the dancers, "I'm still a part of you. I'm just going to do it out there so that they can come and see you guys." Because that's how you reach young kids. And it's so important to meet them where they're at.
Yes.
And it's wild, these opportunities that we're getting to infiltrate and show what dance can be. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you like. It just let them dance. It's really important.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I committed to doing the West Side Story film was to get to work with like the next generation of interpreters of that piece, and to show the world this incredible group of talents, and for young boys to then watch that film and see these guys moving in the way that they do, which is really exceptional. And I can't wait to see like kind of what comes from that over the years. And that was such an important part of what influenced me, like the original West Side Story film as a kid. And so to get the chance to sort of take the next step and offer that to the next generation is a huge part of why I wanted to be a part of that. And I mean,
I think hearing your stories kind of illustrates for us why these organizations like Empowering Boys in Dance that Vail Dance Festival has in partnership with Arts and Society are so important, and you guys are great examples of that.
Absolutely. Maybe 2 more questions.
Anyone else?
Right
Back
here.
there? Yeah.
Mr. Fairchild, could you say something about being Frankenstein's monster?
Yeah. So I thought
it was great.
Oh, thank you. You're so kind. Thank you. I just realized Joe Biden was in the audience because he was friends with one of the creatives. Oh my God. Wild. Frankenstein. So I had just left New York City Ballet, and my agent calls me and he goes, "So, I've got an off-Broadway play for you. They want you to do Frankenstein. They want you to choreograph it." I was like, okay, cool. So then I started diving into the character and the story. It's not unlike what you go through as a young boy in Salt Lake City who has a dream of being a ballet dancer. It was examining those parts that people make you feel are ugly or undesirable, and to bring a lot of humanity to a character that is just shunned from society because of the way they look. You can interpret that the way you are, who you love, what you do, the judgments that everybody puts on you. I don't know. I felt like it was such a wonderful cathartic experience, and being a choreographer was really fun because as being in a play, my first play, I thought, okay, if you don't lead with curiosity as an actor in a scene, it's so boring, and the scene doesn't work. And dance has the same ability to communicate that words do, if not more. The evolution of communication, right? There's no words to speak, you sing. If there's no song to sing, you dance. So dance has the ability to convey certain emotions that you can't put into words. So having that platform as the dancer was really special to give myself framework. Okay, I need to get from here to here in this amount of time. I want to explore what that is every single night in a different way so that it feels real and authentic. And the choreographer won't get upset. I am choreographer. So it was really fun to get to explore that kind of storytelling in dance and make it feel really authentic. And it's not about what kind of lines you hit. It's not about how many turns you do. It's how can you convey in your body what you're feeling, and how does that become full-bodied from a thought to these are the words, these are the text. Like, how can you make that feel really understood from the audience's perspective? So that was fun.
Awesome.
One more right here.
So you guys are mind-blowing, wonderful, but I just want to put in a plug here for these two.
Amen.
Yeah.
What they have done over the years is to bring out the insights of what you guys are like behind the scenes, personalities, and it informs so much more about our understanding of what's going on up there in the stage.
Amazing.
Thank you. That's so nice.
And on that note,
going and plowing forward with an idea and your business that you've created, it's a lot of work and it takes a lot. So truly, kudos for making this happen. It's really awesome.
Thanks, guys.
thank you both for joining us, and thank all of you for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Special thank you to Tom Boyd for producing this episode.